in the office, so as soon as you start going to sound, I can go check that and maybe just come to, right now I'm thinking it's going to be okay.
Very good.
Just need to hit the side of the door.
Bonnie, I think we're ready to go.
Are we ready to call this to order? Officially?
Yep,
Do I have to hit the hammer?
no.
Okay.
I do ask that we do a roll call, so we have an audio of who's participating, because we don't have anybody in the room here.
Don't let Bonnie push the buttons.
What buttons would that be? I am calling the meeting to order, and when we do a roll call, if you guys would give us your name so we can have that on the record.
Hannah?
I heard.
Did we get any?
Hannah?
Yes, Deb Hannah.
Okay.
Callahan?
Callahan?
Hayward?
I'm here.
Hill?
I'm here.
Sharth?
I'm here.
Kurtz?
I'm here.
O'Loughlin?
I'm here.
So is Deb not on, or is Jen not
I
on?
didn't get a response from her.
Oh, just a minute, I gotta,
We're waiting a minute to see if Jen is on with us.
It sounds like I'm on a beach with the surf rolling in.
it sounds like that. We can hear it on this end as well.
Oh, I thought you was motioning.
No. All right. The first item on the agenda is the discussion of the early retirement incentive. You'll want to log into Board Docs. There is some administrative content on there because we have information, personal information. So we had to put it down below. I will tell you that in looking at the numbers, the discussion of 3 years of single coverage for those that might be eligible this year comes to approximately $137,000. That's if we capture the 10% buyback of the sick leave bank at the time of retirement per our personnel policy to help offset that cost in year one. The The Public Works Director concept would involve taking the street superintendent and utility superintendent and creating a Public Works Director position, in essence eliminating one full-time equivalent, which would be approximately $175,000 savings over the 3-year period. That would be the only financial way to cover the cost of the health insurance, because all of the other positions are deemed to be ones that would have to be replaced or filled if they retired. The question that was raised this morning was, in both streets and wastewater in particular, there would have to be a department supervisor, a foreman within those departments under the Public Works Director to oversee the day-to-day work. In the case of the wastewater treatment plant, there is a requirement by DNR to have a responsible party in charge or responsible charge of the operation. So you'd have to have somebody with all of the appropriate licensing and experience to cover that operation, which we do have at the plant currently.
Is
So
that
far-
realistic?
Excuse me?
Is that realistic? I worked under the street department with the director of public works, and it did not seem to work very well.
You're very echoey, Mike. I can't hear you.
I've worked under a director of public works for the street department and the water department and that. It did not work very well.
And how's that?
Lack of knowledge from on the water and sewer, that type of side.
I would agree that there has to be not only a knowledge, but an expectation that they would, in addition to a foreman, they would have to carry the licensure, if not immediately be able to acquire it. I think that knowledge is very important under a public works director, so I'd agree with that.
It's vital. Otherwise, it falls apart and people have no confidence in their decisions.
But again, in looking at the concept of an early retirement incentive, without the reorganization of Public Works, it would be about $137,000 price tag over 3 years for a single coverage for those that are eligible.
Right.
One of the individuals on the list that is eligible tendered a resignation last week, so that would be one less person. I was told that there is one person I don't have on the list because they may be qualified under the Rule of 88 because of IPERS earned someplace outside of the city of Independence. I don't have that information, but it would be a wash if there was another person out there. You're looking at approximately 7 people that would be eligible currently. I'm not sure that all 7 would take it. I just assumed that they all did as a worst-case scenario for cost.
Sure.
The idea is, if we were to go ahead with this, we would look at something like the month of July for people to make the determination that they were or were not going to take the early retirement incentive. And then between July 31st and January 1st, we would do a negotiated retirement. We don't want everybody to leave on the same day because, for example, in the police department, there would be 3. Losing 3 people in the police department the same day would be very challenging. So we'd want to make sure that we had some coverage there before the retirement took effect. Just because their hiring process takes longer than most departments. And if they're not certified, post-certified, we'd have to go through the certification process. So those were that's what the numbers looked like. In round numbers, if you do reorganize, you have basically a break even over the 3-year period as far as cost goes.
So how much would we have to pay a foreman for each of the areas, for the wastewater treatment plant and for street department?
That depends on, really what we set it up to be. If you take a look at the statewide average, everybody's a little bit different in how they handle it, so I don't want to be absolute, but you'd be in that $5,000 or $6,000 a year range.
Are we going to get anybody to take it for that?
Well, I don't know. It's a little premature for me to go looking, I thought, but that's basically where we would be at. There does have to be a financial incentive to do that work because it is a supervisory position. But I don't know if it takes.
$5,000 or $6,000 a year is pretty cheap.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on how much you want to put into it. If you want a foreman, I mean, it can be any number you want. I suppose you can go 10,000, 15,000 if you think the foreman position has got that much more value than the line staff in any of those function areas. But that would be in addition, obviously, to their current salary.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yes.
So
Otherwise, I'll take
$500
two.
a month for, to be the supervisor, or to be the,
Again, we're using somewhat generic numbers. We can take a look at some of the salary surveys that are out there, but it's a changing environment. I don't want to tell you it's an absolute, but again, when we look at the reorganization and the savings there, that number will get chewed up. Some of that gets chewed up in the cost of the foreman. Some of it depends on what it takes to hire a public works director. I looked at a couple of different wage ranges there just to give you an idea of what the current salary surveys show. And they're in the 80.
Would this be similar to what John Jack used to do for the street department? Wasn't he a working leader, Mike? I don't remember for sure.
I'm not sure. He could have been, but I'm not sure.
There was a public works director position with the city once upon a time. I'm not sure what changed there, but there was at one time a public works director position. So if that was John Jack or
I
something.
think there's been 3 different ones in the last 40 years. Wasn't Henderson the last one? Correct. I think he and Alan Johnson didn't get along. Didn't they kind of escort him out with the police department?
That's correct, Bob. Yes, they did. John Jack, he was labeled as a foreman.
So John Jack was a foreman underneath Henderson?
Underneath Tim, I think.
Correct, underneath him.
Is Tim on the call? He could maybe give some insight.
I don't see Tim on the call.
Well, I was thinking we used to have the setup with the public works director, and then we had like Tim with water and streets, and the guy out at the sewer plant, and Mike Walker. We kind of had this set up a little bit, I thought, before.
Well, just the conversations that I've heard suggest that it was set up at one time. I don't know what the history of that is, so we'll just, I'll leave it at that. But I know that in order to make this cash flow, if that's our goal, that's the way it would, I mean, that's the only way to generate the revenue to offset those expenses. If we want to simply eat the cost of the retirement incentive, that would be the $137,000 over 3 years.
Would this system allow us to be able to use maybe existing employees to take over this foreman position as opposed to like having Mark and Tim where they have total control of each department?
Right, this would be an existing employee that would be a foreman. I don't see us hiring additional staff. So it would be somebody that's already in the department. The only place that we're required to have the licensure is at the wastewater plant. I think that's the most difficult
Well, yeah.
one. We also have to have it
The
for water,
The
but
water people have to have licenses.
water has to have licenses, but we have 2 or 3 people that have water licenses. We only have 1 or maybe 2 that have the wastewater. And wastewater collection, it's recommended or desired, but it's not required to have that license. But we have some folks that are licensed in the collection side as well. The most challenging one for us right now is the wastewater treatment side.
How do communities are, I'm sorry, Mike.
No, go ahead.
Are there communities our size with 6,000 that the Public Works Director is common, or, I mean, I guess I don't know, you see that quite a bit in Waterloo, Cedar Rapids, but do towns of 6,000 have that?
Well, I did the salary survey on towns of 4,000 to 8,000, and so, yeah, there are, I don't want to say several, but there are communities in that 4,000 to 8,000 where it's fairly prevalent. But again, I don't want to lead you to believe it's the majority. I don't believe it's the majority of communities, but not totally uncommon.
How much can we save just by starting 2 new people at the bottom of Tim and Mark's pay grade?
If you're going to hire a street superintendent and a utility superintendent, you're not going to save anything. I think if you take a look at the salary survey that's out there, street superintendents are in the upper 60s to upper 70s, depending on the, as far as the range goes. Utility people, if you can find a wastewater treatment person with a grade 3, which we have to have, you better hire them. They're not very common.
Or do we have somebody there is fully a grade 3?
Yes, we have at least one that's a grade 3. I'm not sure if there's a second one. There was another that was working on it, but I don't know if they ever completed it.
Okay.
But I know that we have one.
This might be a curveball question, but there's been some discussion in the past of private companies operating when it's difficult for cities to hire somebody. Would there be anybody for the wastewater treatment, a company that would provide a operator?
I would just soon you didn't say that in a public meeting. I think there's 3 of them watching tonight. There's several companies out there that would like to do that. We've talked to 2 of them just to find out kind of what it looks like, what the model looks like. And like I said, I know of 3 companies out there that's what they do. If you want them to do water, wastewater, or both, they'll take them all, or some segment of that. It's not going to be a money-saving issue as much as it is a capacity issue.
Just a thought, if there are not people available out there to hire, maybe we aren't at that point, but at some point, maybe that might be a route to explore.
Yes, that is again, the companies are out there, they have the personnel, they like to do it. They are for-profit companies, but again, there's 3 of them that serve this part of the country that I'm sure you'd get quotes from all 3 of them if that's the way we wanted to go.
We probably still want to keep it in-house at this point, but just wanted to throw that out there to see what others thought.
Well, if we got 2 grade 3s, we're in pretty good shape.
Well, if we have 1, we're in good shape compared to a lot of communities. If we have 2, we're blessed.
Yeah.
And I'd have to double check on that. I apologize. I didn't look into the second one to confirm it. Any other questions or anything else that I'm missing on looking at this to get you information before we're not making a decision obviously tonight, but is there anything else that you want to see before you look at this more seriously?
So the only
I have one question. I have one question, Al. How does this position interface with your contact with these departments? Like right now, you have a fairly close working relationship with each of these departments. How do you stay in tune with what they're doing if you've got this new person between you and them?
Well, from past experience, it doesn't change it very much. We're not that big of an organization. I've been in organizations where we've had the Public Works Director type of position. It's just a matter of, again, we only have 40 full-time equivalents or 42 full-time equivalents, so we're not long on personnel. We stay pretty close regardless. There is a risk there without a concerted effort to pay attention to the rest of the department, but again, that's in any size organization. I think the real challenge is working with the foreman to make sure that they are empowered to do what it is that we're asking them to do. It's one thing to have a foreman and assign or delegate the duties, but there has to be a level of empowerment for them to actually accomplish the job as well. And they'll need some guidance and some help with that as they go through the process too.
Would they do the evaluations of the department people then too?
Yes, generally under that scenario, they would do the staff evaluations, the Public Works Director would do the foreman evaluations, and I would continue to do the department head evaluations.
I guess my biggest concern is we've got a Public Works Director that would be higher paid, and then we'd be putting in some foremen, and they would probably be higher paid than what they are now. And all of a sudden, we've created another nightmare for us as far as salaries. That's my only concern.
And again, I'm just going off of salary survey at this point. The data is updated annually, but that's all I've looked at is trying to get a feel for it. The $80,000 to $90,000 range, I think, is middle of the road. You will find them as high as $100,000 and as low as $68,000, $69,000. I think the 68 or 69 for Public Works Director is in a fairly small community as opposed to a community of 6,000. If you're going to find somebody.
One of the
Go ahead.
One of the things that I could see here, and we had this trouble, Dustin, remember, in the police department with salary separation, that at one point we had the chief and some of the patrol officers who did a lot of overtime were almost making the same salary. How does this affect you, Al, then, if we bring somebody in for $85,000 and your salary is this going to create a separation problem in wages?
I don't think so. The wages are what it takes to get the people that you want. You have to take a look at, the caliber of or quality of individuals you want in each of the positions, but I don't see that in this position. If you start going over 100,000, it creates a pretty tight band in there, but until you get to 100,000, it doesn't really get that tight.
Okay, well, I just didn't want, we hire somebody and then 6 months, you take a look at what you're making and what they're making and say, whoa, this isn't, for responsibilities, there's not a big enough separation.
Right. Well, again, you know, I don't think that I see that in this, in the numbers I've seen, but it's something that has to be paid attention to.
So what did you want from us? Did you want to go further and flesh this out more, or where are we at?
Well, because we're in a work session, we can't make decisions here. I'm sharing the information. I want to make sure that if there's anything else out there that you're looking for or would like to have information, that we get it to you. We would bring it back to a council meeting for actual action on it if it's something that the council is still intrigued with or interested in pursuing further. That doesn't mean that because it goes to a council meeting, you have to support it or move ahead with it. But again, right now, I just want to make sure you get the information, you kind of take a look at what those numbers are, the costs are, and let me know what else you need to know.
Al, you mentioned this morning that there might be one other employee that might have enough to retire early also. I would like you to pursue that and find out the details.
Okay. I'll see what I can find out. Again, they would be
Thank you.
qualified based on IPERs earned outside of the city, so I want to be careful, you know, how far I push that. There's, you know, that we aren't getting into some private information, but these are the ones that are currently or will be qualified this year under IPERs for their particular departments. But I will look into that other outstanding individual that might.
Thank you.
Is it okay we move on to the next item?
The next issue is the Park and Rec's maintenance job description. This is a job description that Bob has taken a look at. It needs to be updated. It has not been modified since we brought on our Assistant Parks and Rec Director. And there's a pretty minor, I think, overall changes. You'll see them highlighted in red in the job description.
I got thinking about this. Didn't we do some changes to that when we hired him originally?
When we hired the Parks and Rec Assistant Director,
Yes.
the last time this particular position was revised in their job description was July of 2016. I think that was prior to the Assistant Director.
I thought we had modified his job responsibilities since he's going to come on.
It would be, well, I apologize, I'd have to go back and double check when Brent was hired. Again, this is, real quickly, they added the coordinating all ongoing maintenance at River's Edge and Falcon Civic Center. Evening, winter hours supervision of staff and patrons within the Falcon Civic Center. And facilitates timely and proper vehicle and mower maintenance, operation of aquatic center, pump house, including chemical purchases and water testing standards. These are things that the position has been doing, but again, we didn't have them specific to the, specifically identified in the job description. and conducts annual building safety audits as warranted by the city safety officer. That one is new as far as a duty, but that's in keeping with our goal to do self-audits citywide.
In reviewing it, it makes sense, but I thought we did something on this. Bob Hill, do you remember at all when we did this?
Now, this is a job description for the replacement for the individual that was terminated.
No,
No.
well, this would
Is
be,
this
this is a, regardless of anything else that takes place, this update really needs to happen, just to reflect the,
Well, no, but I'm saying, who's this for? Is this for the assistant director, or is it for, I guess I'm kind of confused on who this job description, is it somebody that's currently working, we're changing?
this is,
Or
no,
is it,
I'm sorry, this is the position that is currently vacant, the Parks and Building Maintenance Labor. It's the maintenance position, it is not the assistant director. This person reports to
okay,
the
that's
assistant.
what I was getting confused on.
The
So-
hire date for Brent Reck was 11/13 of 2017, so this was last revised prior to Brent being hired, almost 18 months before Brent was hired.
Well,
Now I'm really
in- in-
confused. I thought this was about Brent.
Oh, no,
Yeah, that's,
I
see, I thought
apologize.
we did work on this job description because I think we filled this position when the guy that was like did the pool maintenance for like about 1,000 years.
Yes,
He retired.
Sweeney.
Yeah, and then we decided to try to make that position more of a year-round, multiple parks thing. I think that's what you may be thinking of, John.
It is.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
That's when Brett Reck got hired.
that's correct.
That was a replacement for Chris Anderson.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
I was confused.
Yeah, this is the position that reports to Brent. This
So
position,
specifically, what added duties are we giving that person? New
the-
duties.
well, these are duties that have already been covered or being covered, but not necessarily reflected as clearly in the job description as what we thought they should be. Coordinating the ongoing maintenance of River's Edge and Falcon Civic Center. That's the maintenance side, not the operations, just the maintenance. Evening, winter hours supervision of staff and patrons at the Civic Center. This position during the summer is working first shift, the 7 to 3:30 in the Parks Department. In the winter, we put him on second shift to do the supervision of primarily the part-time staff and patrons at the Civic Center specifically. Vehicle maintenance and mower maintenance, that's ongoing for a parks maintenance laborer. Operation of the Aquatic Center Pump House, including chemical purchases and water testing standards. That's the certified pool operator piece that we expect. We have, with this position, 3 certified pool operators to make sure that we have somebody available at all times. Conducts annual building safety audits and as warranted by the city safety officer. That's the only really new piece to this job description.
Who's the city safety officer?
Fire Chief Newton. And then on the top of page 3 of that job description, it really clarifies the fact that there will be they'll be working first shift in the summer, second shift in the winter, and it spells out those time frames. And again, that was a clarification. And I don't, looking real quick here, yeah, those are the big changes. Again, it's just basically housekeeping issues with the job description.
Did we clarify the hours for the second shift?
Well, with the Civic Center being open till 9, it's an 8-hour shift that ends at 9:15 during the winter. So I guess they'd start at, what, noon or 12:30? I'm sorry, not noon, 1 o'clock. 12:30 or 1 o'clock, because they have a half-hour meal break in there during the course of the 8-hour shift.
Okay.
What, Santa Claus just going through or what? That sounded like Jingle Bells. The only thing I ask here, Al, does changing this job description that I understand that there's an appeal for the person that used to hold it, does this cause any problems with that whole appeal process if we change this job description right now?
It has no bearing at all because it's just housekeeping. Regardless of the outcome or that situation there, this really needs to be, again, for everybody's sake, it needs to be addressed. It'll make our evaluation system clear. It'll make the position, any questions that there might be about what the position does, again, it clarifies those topics. It really doesn't change the job. The only real addition
Okay.
is the facility audits in conjunction with the safety director.
Okay.
So those are the only changes to the PDQ that you made?
Those are the only changes of significant. The rest of it is pretty, again, housekeeping issues. If you take a look at those topics, it's coordinating maintenance at the River's Edge and Civic Center, evening, winter hours supervision of staff and patrons. That's been happening. Facilitates timely and proper vehicle and mower maintenance. That's what a park maintenance laborer would do. Aquatic center pump house, including chemical purchases and water testing. Again, that falls under the certified pool operator piece. And then the new topic of annual building safety audits. So that would be the only thing that would be what I classify as new duties in the position. It also changes the reporting to. You'll see that currently it says reports to Parks and Rec Director. We added Parks and Recreation Director, Assistant Director. Instead of reporting directly to Bob, it reports to Brent. And that reflects what's currently taking place. And this has to be voted on by the council because it's updating the job description. We just wanted you to see it ahead of time.
This is something we'll have on the agenda.
Thank you.
Yep, this will be on the agenda next Monday.
Okay.
The next item on the agenda is the solid waste fee structure. This time of year, we generally have to review where our contract is with Waste Management, as well as our fees that we're collecting within the community to make sure they're balancing. You'll see that we are very close to a break even, and so it's time to take a look at how those fees balance out. I did put in there some numbers just to generate some thought. This morning, we discussed having a slightly modified fee increase for each size of container, or just doing a flat fee across the, flat percentage rather, across the board. 1,700 of our containers are the 96 gallon, 400 containers are the 64, and 408 are the 32, either the 32 gallon or the 32 senior rate. The committee this morning asked about looking at the 96 and 64 gallon containers, modifying those rates, leaving the 32 gallon and the 32 gallon senior rates the same. I did work some numbers out that would work with that, but I did send a question down to the city attorney to make sure that as small of a change as what we're making, it was not considered discriminatory pricing. That is something that we do have to be somewhat sensitive to. I don't know that this would fall into that, but I wanted to make sure that whatever we do, if it's not exactly the same across the board, that we weren't going to put ourselves into a difficult place. What we're looking at is, currently we spend $39,165 on average each month with our contract with Waste Management. Currently, we're right at or just below that for what we receive. I don't know that we're going to have a rate increase this year, but I think it is July 1st usually is when it would take effect, if there was going to be one. The last couple of years, they've had a 3% increase each year in their fees. So we want to take a look at this early enough so that we are not subsidizing solid waste collection fees with property tax dollars, and that's why we're bringing it up right now. The one thing I do want to bring up, though, is we are in the middle of a challenging time for our community and for our citizens, and so I know the committee talked about it this morning. We're not anxious to go out there and try and raise a bunch of rates or fees, but it is the time of year where we start talking about it. I want to caution you on making any significant increases, maybe that would take effect right away, but be aware of the fact that we do have to modify our solid waste fees at some point this year so that we are solvent in that fund balance. This is not a revenue stream for the city. This is a break-even operation. So we don't make any money on solid waste. We just collect enough to pay our solid waste contract and our waste amnesty day. The fees for that generally come out of this pool of money as well.
So how much are we looking at going up beyond 1614 a month?
Well, somewhere between 1635 and 1670, depending on where we end up with this, just in round numbers. On the
Al, as I
96
said this morning, I would prefer to raise the 96 and 64 gallon and leave the 32 gallon ones the same.
Correct.
I think with the current situation that we're in, number one, we don't want to put more pressure on limited income households. And number two, I would like to put it where it's effective January 1st instead of at the fiscal year. I know that Waste Management's probably going to come in with a 2 to 3% increase. I think if we went to the 96 and went to a $17 and to the 64 go to a $16, it would offset it.
Yes, it would, but we want to make sure that we take a look at, and again, just so you're aware, we want to make sure that we don't get put in a position where it's viewed as discriminatory pricing. And so we're going to double check on that before we bring anything forward that would not raise all of them the same. And I want to honor that request. I thought it was a very good suggestion. I would support that as long as we're okay doing that. So that was my one caveat, John, is to make sure that we don't get crossways with any kind of perceived pricing issue on it. It's not very much, but we want to make sure that we stay above.
I
reproach.
appreciate that. I
So-
appreciate that, but I know Waste Management is gonna have to increase their fees. It's in their contract.
Correct.
I have a question here. With Waste Management, have we been paying any fuel surcharge?
No, not the last
Okay,
4 years.
okay.
That
I
is
know
also,
when fuel prices were up there, we were paying them a fuel surcharge.
correct. And I know the last, well, I'll say 3 years for sure, we haven't been, so that's been a blessing. That is in their contract, that is pretty standard for that type of an operation, but we haven't had to the last, like I said, 3 or 4 years, so.
I see, it looks like we're already, the 32-gallon one, they're already paying 57 cents difference from what Waste Management's charging. So I think we should point that out to the attorney when you bring John's idea up to him, because heck, we're already getting more from them than what we're getting charged.
No, I understand. I just want to make sure that, again, I think that we're okay with it, but I want to make sure that we have their blessing on how we structure this. That was my only caution to you.
Will we need to raise our environmental fee also?
No, we don't have to raise the environmental fee because that's what runs our tree dump. And at this
I know.
point, I won't tell you that it's flush with money, but I think it covers the basics of what we're doing there. That's something that will have to be looked at before very long, but I don't know that this is the year that we have to do that.
Hey, Al, you talked about Waste Amnesty Day. Do we have a date set for that yet?
Well, tentatively, it is the first Saturday I'm sorry, it would be the second Saturday in June. I don't, let me look at my calendar here. June 6th would be the date if everything stays on track. I will tell you that most communities around the state right now are delaying commitment to that or postponing them because of our current situation. But June 6th would be the day if we hold true to our time frame.
Thank you.
Any other questions about the solid waste fee structure?
I would agree with John's suggestion that if we do something, we wait till January 1st. That right now would be kind of a extra kick in the pants for citizens.
Yep.
Right.
Agreed.
Can't make a decision tonight.
We'll keep working on it. I understand, and like I said, we had a good discussion this morning. We'll just make sure that we're doing it the right way and bring it back to you at a council meeting. We're going to talk briefly about our budget amendment that'll be on Monday's council agenda, and Gina has that information.
I sent you out the packet with the budget information earlier, and then I also added some of the attachments this afternoon with a simplified spreadsheet. There's not much in way of difference in the budget amendment than we've had in the past. Our standard is there needs to be revenues to cover any increase in expenses. There are a few exceptions with some of the decisions you guys have made along the way, but other than that, we've held pretty close to making sure that there's revenues to offset those expenses. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions.
I'm having trouble, can you explain that again? I had trouble hearing.
Are you having trouble hearing Gina?
Correct.
Gina's going to come around by the phone.
This is pretty close to your standard budget amendment that we would do every single year. We typically always ask that there's revenues that offset any of the expenses, that they're asking for an increase to. There are a few throughout that have been approved along the year, and those changes are added, but other than that, we've held pretty true to making sure that there's revenues to offset the expenses, and I didn't know if you guys had any specific questions on the documents that were sent out today.
Is the library budget amendment in there? Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, it is.
Okay,
There's a couple of items in there that they amended, but it's primarily,
The only amendment that I received for them was full-time wages. Now, there is not a revenue offset that, but they are asking to use fund balance for that.
there's no problem doing that, is there?
no. That would be their money that they can make that determination, make that request with. Any other questions? That will be brought up again on Monday night at the council meeting for your review.
And I will need to get it prepared and sent off to the papers before then, however, to meet our publication deadline.
Is this for our July, is this for the end of the year budget amendment, balancing it out?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah, usually we wait till our budget is complete and then try and do the budget amendment about the same time frame. And this is each year we have some budget amendment that comes up to kind of close out the year.
okay.
Under the Public Safety and Public Works Committee, we did not meet today. I will point out, under the Public Works Committee, Mark Luloff sent in a brief department update. We are not doing water meter changes or modifications where we have occupied homes because of the current COVID-19 event. We are putting meters in new houses or unoccupied houses. Chemical companies so far are maintaining their deliveries, but we're doing social distancing as their companies are requiring and as we do. Under the sewer collection, we're only doing sewer backup calls for right now. Everybody's using extra precautions with personal protection equipment. Visa Sewer was in town last week and lined 4 blocks of problem sewer lines. Wastewater, there's not a whole lot going on with wastewater right now because of our limited staff. We're working split shifts with the water and wastewater folks. Right now, everybody's healthy and our operation is working, so we're keeping it that way. I will tell you that we are aware of one water main leak in the northeast that has to be repaired. It'll take an inserter valve to fix it. We're not rushing into it because it's not real problematic at this point, but we are aware of it and we're watching it very closely. If we get anybody talking about a water main leak in the northeast, I believe it's on 7th Avenue Northeast.
I had a call on that today.
Okay. We're aware of it, but I don't see a need to put anybody in harm's way at this point, but we'll continue to watch it.
Al, what location is it, so in case somebody calls?
I believe it's around 7th Avenue and 8th Street or 9th Street, in that area.
Thank you.
Al, going back to the water meter changeovers, have we talked with Indytel? Will they give us, depending how much longer this whole shutdown goes on, do we have some leeway that as far as they will continue to read meters for us?
We have not had that conversation at this point. I don't know what we're looking for or what we might need because we don't know how long we're not able to do the work. And unfortunately, at this
Well,
time,
I just think we should probably talk to them so that we might assume they will know we're not going to have everything changed over, but I feel better if we talked with them and they just didn't suddenly tell us they don't have anybody doing the job anymore.
I understand. Yeah, right now, we have some numbers for contracting out the changeover, but even at that, we can't send people into homes to do it right now anyway, so. But I will visit with them
I mean,
and
they're
see what we
talking
have.
about this might extend into the fall.
Right. It means we have to have a bigger army to make the changes. I'll visit with Kevin about that and see what we can come up with. Under the stormwater utility, we're working on the model ordinance, basing it off of what Brian Crawford had supplied for us, and the city attorney is putting it into the right framework for our code of ordinances for your review. The reason I put it on here tonight is I wanted to ask that you give consideration, well, first of all, I want you to know it's not forgotten, but I think right now is not the most appropriate time for us to bring it forward. I think we can discuss it and look at it, but similar to what we discussed with the garbage rates, I just want you to be sensitive to what's going on in our community and that we're aware of that before we implement something of this nature. But
Very good idea.
it is out there, we're aware of it, and we have not forgotten it.
I would agree with holding that off.
Yes.
Do you want us to bring it up for public hearing and discuss it, or do you want to just drop the whole thing until this fall?
I'd drop it to the
I
fall.
think, yeah, I think in the fall, and then maybe again, just like the waste management thing, look at something around the first of the year.
Okay.
That'd be
I
my
would agree
feeling
with
anyway.
that.
Just because we're on a roll, talking about the sidewalk replacement project, we're ready to go out to the public with notices of repair of the sidewalks. I'm uncomfortable with that, and I would ask the council to allow us to, as important as the sidewalk replacement is, these are the ones that are broken, that have to be replaced, that cannot be repaired. But I would ask the council's forbearance on this until next year. Is this a project that you'd be okay with us putting off until 2021? Again, all in the same vein, this is not seeming like a good year.
Had we met today, I was going to bring that up, Al. I agree with you. I'd like to wait till next summer.
I brought that up this morning in our meeting. I think it's to our advantage for our citizens, put that off till next year, and this would give people more time. If they wanted to do it themselves, they could do it, and not put more added financial pressures on our citizens.
Yes.
Well, I know we can't,
Time to get back into the team.
I did not catch that last comment.
I think the citizens are gonna they're gonna need a little extra time to get back into the seat once they get past it.
Yes. Again, I know we can't make decisions here, but I wanted to bring it up. We have not forgotten about it. We're working on it, but I appreciate it. I wanted to make sure that you understood where we're at with it, and I think that at this point, we'll keep talking about it. I think the public should be aware that this is going to be an issue that has to be resolved, but we don't need to drive this issue home in 2020. I think we can do that in 21, summer of 2021, and like John said, I think it'll be better for everybody.
Al, do we need to put that on our agenda for our next council meeting?
I think it would be best if we did that, again, just to make sure the public is aware that it's still out there. We did send out our preliminary notice as a courtesy back in January, but I think we really owe it to the citizens to let them know that that's what we're doing. So with your permission, I think I'll put both of these on the next agenda to make sure that we talk about them and let people know that while it's still out there, the council can vote on formally delaying the projects.
Thank you.
But you said two things, Al. What were the two things?
Stormwater utility and sidewalk replacement.
Oh, okay.
I would also like to see us address the approaches on the bridge and the poor job they did on the sidewalk on the way down to the
Good point.
Yes,
Al, I
we
had
have- go ahead.
the public ramps. You guys are talking about the sidewalk replacement project. Is the public ramp project still going to continue forward with the bid?
The sidewalk ramps, the handicap ramps, I think we should proceed with. That's something that is city-driven. That's our project, if you will. That's not affecting the citizens as directly as the sidewalk would.
Okay, very good. So if that's on next, I don't want anybody to be surprised about that.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. The ramps, I think we are proceeding with because that is part of the city's project, not the citizens.
Okay, very,
Thank you, Brian, for bringing that up.
yes, you're welcome.
And we did receive our proceedings, I think, well, at least the titles for the agenda, we've received from Dorsey, so that is moving forward at this point. That's all I have for you tonight.
Are there any other topics?
One question, Al, on the city parks, we are going to put up the snow fence around the playground equipment.
Right now, we're putting up caution tape. We had closed the playground equipment previously. The governor officially closed all playground equipment this morning. Bob was going to have his staff put that caution tape up around them today. Before we put up snow fence, we have to do a one call, and before we put any posts out there. So we're going to start with the caution tape, but the snow fence will go up if we can't keep people off the playground equipment for sure. But we have to have a couple of days for the one call.
Okay, the other thing was the basketball hoops, and I know that was brought up by the Blackhawk County Sheriff on the news. I think everybody's having trouble with large groups of teenagers liking to play basketball.
Yep.
And I know Bob was a little hesitant to take the hoops down, but I think that's the only way we're going to get the teenagers from not congregating on the basketball courts.
I will talk with Bob again about it. I know we had a conversation earlier today, but we'll take another look at that. We have to encourage people not to be congregating. The governor was emphatic this morning about that and has been, and so we have to do our part to help them.
I'd like to encourage us all to encourage the mayor to send in a proposal from the City of Independence that we support a shelter-in-place designation until the 30th of April, and try to get us through the worst of this.
What is the difference from what we're doing right now to the shelter-in-place designation? Tell me the difference.
Pardon?
Mayor would like to know the difference in the shelter in place from what we're doing currently.
There's more closures, there's limitations on hours, and it keeps more people in. I live out by Walmart, so you've on me the last couple of days, and I see tons of traffic, and Walmart's box and busting at the seams. A shelter in place could have some impact on that.
A shelter-in-place does what? I didn't understand that.
He said Walmart's been bursting at the seams. A shelter-in-place would have some effect on limiting all that traffic out there too, as well as limiting hours.
I thought Walmart went down to one door and limiting people coming in. They haven't done that here yet?
I never been.
They have. Yeah, Mayor is asking some questions about it. We'll talk about that some more as well, Mike.
Sounds good.
Other questions, topics?
Our dog park is currently still open, isn't it?
The dog park, we haven't officially closed it. I'd have to look more closely at the declaration today to see if it affects the dog park. Because it's primarily an open area, I'm not sure if it would be. And I know that question came up earlier. I just haven't had a chance to read through their declaration to get a definitive answer.
And did we get a clarification on the
I think the primary thing about the dog park is to encourage people to keep the separation. I see no reason for us to close down the dog park, but people maintain the separation when they're utilizing the dog park.
Well, the separation, and then we have to be sensitive to using any benches or facilities that are there.
I agree.
The one thing that I saw on the news tonight was one of the zoos had animals that had caught the coronavirus.
Correct.
And I don't know what it was, but a few years ago when my daughter lived out in Arizona, they closed all of the dog parks when there was some kind of a disease amongst dogs that they were worried would be passed around by using dog parks. So I only think and of course, John, I know you're going to keep track of this because your dogs are like children to you, but there may come a point where we may need to, just for protection of the animals themselves.
Well, that's
The dogs were keeping their distance yesterday. It was the people that weren't.
I agree.
And I think if we go to the shelter in place, if the governor goes to that, all those things are going to get closed down.
Yeah, shelter in place would close down any of those amenities, but what makes it a little bit tricky is they're encouraging people to be in open space, to be outside when the weather's nice. And so using green space but not using any of the park amenities or equipment, it really gets to be a confusing message to the public when we're trying to say what they can and can't do with our parks, dog park included. So I think the social distancing is the critical piece no matter what we do. And that's the real goal of all of these declarations.
Sadly, it's easier to train dogs than it is people.
That's for sure.
Got that, John?
I think we're finding that out.
Well, hey, Dustin, I was going to ask you, on our officers, when they're coming in contact with people, is there anything in the police criteria? I noticed they're talking more and more about wearing at least cotton masks. Are we doing anything with our officers when they stop a car? Or?
Yeah, as of right now, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
As of right now, the officer is only going to stop stuff if it's a severe risk to safety. If somebody's going 7-8 miles over the speed limit right now, we're not going to be stopping a car. If we go to a residence because of a call, we have the officers, when they first start their shift, will clean their car. They have to wipe their car down because we don't know what the officer before them got into. And then when they go somewhere, they have masks to wear. If they go inside, they have gloves to wear. I've told them if they can interview people outside, don't go into the house. Actually, at our office, we don't let people even into our office. If we're going to interview anybody, it will be in our waiting room out front. We don't go past the second door for any reason. They said I have as much as I can to keep them in the best shape they can and provide them with everything they can to whatever situation they get into. But there will be times that we'll get somewhere and we have to react right now and don't have time to put that stuff on. So we're going to do the best we can with what we have. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
Can we have some council comments?
Yes.
I would like to congratulate the Chamber of Commerce for organizing the cruise Sunday with the fire department and all the people that participated. It was really a pretty fun event. And it really showed how our community pulls together.
Good.
And
Chamber
also
also,
surrounding communities came.
Yes, Old Line brought all their people down here. It was a lot of fun.
And everybody practice social distancing,
For the most
majority.
part.
majority.
Yep.
anybody else have any comments or questions?
I did forward an email to Al and Tim Donnelly today about some improvements to our parking lot that we have just west of St. John's. How we could properly line that to make it more inviting for people to use it as a parking lot and to encourage downtown employers to encourage their employees to park there and free up parking spaces closer to businesses for our customers. There's been an ongoing challenge to us about providing enough parking spaces for customers, and I think this would go a long way to helping that. And if we can get the employers to help enforce that for us, I think that would be a great thing. And talking with Tim today, he sounds like he's all willing to do that. And Al mentioned he was going to talk with Tim about getting it done. So I think that would really greatly improve our situation of parking. The other thing is to add some signing down there to encourage people to park there because it is a sitting parking lot, but there's really nothing that identifies it as parking for downtown.
Correct. And I know it's a little bit early. I know with the day like today and tomorrow, it'll feel like summer, but it's just a little bit on the early side for Tim and his guys to pull the painting equipment out, but I know that they will be starting before too long.
They will have to have rain all this week.
Yes.
Anyone else?
Oh, Al,
Yes?
we talked earlier about the golf carts. Maybe people would like to at least know where we are on that.
The golf cart ordinance will be coming to you on Monday to set a public hearing on the golf cart ordinance that has been through Captain Brinkema and the city attorney and is ready for you to address as a council. But that is on Monday's agenda.
Does Rob
Can we send, can we send that out early so we can look at it?
Yes.
Can we make sure Rob Ratchford knows?
Yes?
So Monday night, we're only setting the public hearing.
Well, I agree. The challenge that I have is public safety. We didn't meet today, and it didn't rise to the level of where I thought we should pull a committee together for this topic. This is taking all of the comments that we've had from the council and from the golf cart proponents over the last several months and put them into an ordinance. So it's just putting it into the ordinance language. I don't think you're going to find anything in there that hasn't been talked about at length with Rob and his group, as well as council comments and concerns that were raised.
I've only been in one meeting with Rob and his,
That's the only meeting we've had with him. Sounds like-
I should clarify, I talked to Al about it when I called him about the closing down of the playground equipment. I also asked him about where we were at on that, so that's how that discussion came about.
So Monday
Sounds
night,
like-
Monday night, we will be setting the hearing date for that,
Yes.
but sending a copy of the ordinance out to everybody so you can see it. That be on our website too, for people? Wait for the public to see it.
When we post the agenda, it's not passed or anything like that. I would hate to put it out there and make people think that it's passed by
Yeah.
putting it on the website.
Yeah, we don't want to post the golf cart ordinance on the website. I'll make sure Rob gets a copy and I get it out to you as a council, but because it has not been adopted, we don't want to put it out there as if it is the final ordinance before the council takes action. So we want to be careful with that.
We have already had
this is
some
such an
people.
odd deal. We were told by Dustin and the others that this is almost unenforceable. And yet, and I said, well, why would we have it then? And yet, no further discussion took place. Why are we having it?
Well, the council has not addressed this in a decision-making body at this point. If the council wants to address the ordinance or make changes to it or not approve it, that is the council's prerogative, but not until it's addressed as a council agenda item. That's the purpose of where we're going with this.
I don't understand how there was no input to put an ordinance together, but I guess I'll just address that in another time in another venue.
Well, the council did talk about this in work session. I mean, that's how we got to this point, but said we were going to wait till this spring to put it together. So at this point, we've got the ordinance for you to consider, but it is still a council decision. Other topics?
I really do think we should discuss it before we put it up to council. Just
I
my
agree.
opinion.
In what setting or what are you talking about as far as discussing?
I'm sorry, you broke up on me. I couldn't hear you.
You said something about you thought we need to discuss it again with the council. In what setting or what are you talking about? Clarify what you mean.
I think we should be able to review it before we put it before the council to vote on it.
Well,
You want to have a separate committee of the whole meeting to do it?
I think that might be advantageous for us. I think we should air everything out before we get into a council meeting to vote on it.
but was going to be the agenda? Was that?
I don't know if that's the agenda.
Well, I have no trouble. My schedule is fairly open here to have a committee of the whole meeting.
Next committee of the whole meeting won't be until April, or till May, rather.
Well,
What
let's
does
have a
anybody
special
else
meeting.
think about it?
I think you got the right idea, Don.
How about if we get a copy?
I mean, I don't
How about if we get a copy of it sent out to you and you all can look at it and then we can decide whether or not, because the only thing was going to be on Monday's agenda was strictly to set a public hearing, which has to go through a
I just
public
have a
hearing
problem
before we
with
can vote on it.
Throwing something out in front of us that we've not seen and have to vote on it all of a sudden and not weigh all the issues.
Well, you wouldn't be voting on it until after the public hearing.
We'll send it out to you and we'll take a look at when we can have a committee of the whole meeting for you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Okay.
If there's nothing else, I would suggest that we have an adjournment. So,
No,
so be it.
Yeah.
We
no
don't-
action.
We don't have to,
Very good
we don't
idea,
have to
Bobby.
have a motion on that, so I'm just adjourning us for tonight.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate
You
you.
totalitarian dictator.
I'm not, no, but I have the right to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, folks.
Thanks a lot.
Good night.
Thank you.
We
Good
never
night.
did get Jen. Jen was not part of it.
No.
That's right.